Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
That was one of the most noble speeches ever given by a sports figure in the history of the world. That was Lou Gehrig, of Lou Gehrig's disease fame. He was a great American baseball player who was dying of Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. And he went before his beloved audience at the Yankee Stadium, and he gave that speech, which is still to this day considered one of the most noble speeches ever given by anyone at any time. And the reason I'm playing that speech is because Stephen Hawking died of ALS. And we now learn today that he said there is no God in his final book. I took umbrage at that for a number of reasons, and I asked today on Twitter a few questions about Stephen Hawking. As tragic as his life was because of ALS, did it suddenly elevate him to a position greater than that of Albert Einstein? How do scientists like Stephen Hawking become demigods of thought, suddenly in all fields, including theology? It's the same question as Dr. Ford being bigger now than Dr. Freud. How did that fraud, Dr. Ford, notice they called her Dr. Ford, they don't call him Dr. Hawkins, did you notice that? Just watch how the media applies labels to people. She was Dr. Ford, everyone in that kind of sanctimony, oh, Dr. Ford, doctor. How did she become bigger than Dr. Freud? And how did Hawking become bigger than Einstein? Well, today on the Savage Nation, amongst other topics, I'm going to talk about everything you wanted to know about Lou Gehrig's disease and more. And the reason I'm going to do that is because, as I said, Stephen Hawking died a while ago, and now we're being told today that he declared in his final book, God is not dead, he or she never existed in the first place. CNN reported. He said, no one directs the universe. Now, it disturbed me for a number of reasons. Why should his thoughts on God, meaning his atheistic thoughts on the non-existence of God, suddenly supersede that of all of humanity from the beginning of theological history? Well, it shouldn't. But you'll notice how the media is playing this great role. And I asked the question today, why is Stephen Hawking considered such a world genius? Well, because he pushed global warming, and now we learn he said there is no God. He's an atheist guru. And I want to discuss his disease, ALS, today for two reasons. One, because of what he said, there is no God, and we can then segue into what is ALS and other neurological diseases, including Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Now, if you're young, you're probably not interested in this because you figure you're immune and you're immortal and you're never going to be affected by disease. That's okay. Everyone thinks they're immortal, just as they think that they're communists when they're 20. But the thing is, you'll get a little older and you'll find out that, A, you're not a communist. You're probably a devout capitalist once you have to pay taxes. And you'll also find out you're not immortal, and you'll start worrying about diseases, heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, things like that, like everyone else, cancer. And you'll start to read more on it, and you won't follow crackpot theories on diets in order to protect yourself. You might actually just study some science. Now, the secondary reason I'm interested in ALS is because back in the late 70s, when I was working towards my PhD at the University of California at Berkeley, you can laugh if you want to be an ignorant fool, still one of the great universities in the world in the sciences. One of my dissertation topics was ALS and tropical plants, because there was a relationship that had been found between a certain primitive type of palm known as a false sago palm, or cycads, that look like palms. They're very ancient plants. And a certain subpopulation of people in Guam, the Chamorro people, who used the seeds of this plant to make a sort of flour which they made into tortillas. And they developed, those people had a high incidence of this neurodegenerative disease called amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Parkinsonism, dementia complex. These are diseases characterized by motor impairment. We're all interested in that. So there was an environmental connection that I was fascinated by, and I wrote about it a little bit. I didn't really advance knowledge that much. I advanced my own knowledge. But just going back to cycads, if you find them, if you look it up, cycads, C-Y-C-A-D-S, what's interesting about them, they're amongst the fossils of many geological formations dating back to the Mesozoic. And the living species of cycads are survivors of plants which existed many millions of years ago. They're one of the most ancient species of plants on the earth. And so in these populations, also in regions of Japan, in the islands of Japan, they use the seeds of this cycad to make a flour, but they also, it was found, had high amounts of ALS. See what I'm saying? So I said, wait a minute, what the heck is this? What does this have to do with health, and how does this plant have to do with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease? Well, I'm talking about it because of Stephen Hawking saying there is no God. Well, there's much to talk about, and if I had 3 or 4 hours with you, I could talk about ALS and the induction of neurofibrillary tangles with a tau isoform distribution, similar to that found in Alzheimer's disease and associated with the lesions found in TDP43 and LRRK2. But what does it have to do with Cycas micronesica, the false sago palm? And what does it have to do with you? What foods, you're going to ask me, should you avoid to avoid the disease allegedly related to this cycad, also known as the Leytico-Bodig syndrome, ALS again? What is it? What's in this food? What is in it that does it? Well, it may be a compound that is produced by bacteria. And what's interesting is the traditional diet of the Chamorro people in Guam also included the fruit bat, bats. Now, bats, listen to this to show you how science works. Bats are a species that feed on cycad seed components. And as they feed on these seeds from this plant, they accumulate a compound called BMAA. Now, what is BMAA? Well, it's a type of protein that can cause this disease, because BMAA is reported in the brain tissue of Guam patients, and data is suggesting that some Northern American patients, that would be you, who are dying of Alzheimer's disease, also have detectable brain levels of BMAA. This is fascinating. And so if you look into this in any detail, you are led to, the green slime that's found in lakes, things like that? That's the dangerous stuff. And what originally started as the discovery of a little-known disease in Guam has now spread to a list of findings about some of our most debilitating brain disorders and potential toxins that are laying in bodies of water around the world. This is a fascinating study. And this part of it is the part that you may be interested in, but I don't want to alarm you into not eating shellfish or shrimp. But truthfully, you should know a little bit about that, especially if you study any of this, because you'll see insights into the disease. And you'll find that many of it is clustered around bodies of water where there's an environmental toxin, again called BMAA, that is produced by cyanobacteria. That's the blue-green algae that live in soil, lakes, and oceans. Now, what does it have to do with you? Well, these cyanobacteria are eaten by fish and other aquatic creatures. And studies have shown that BMAA is found in seafood. What does that have to do with you? It means that certain diets and locations may put people at particular risk for neurological disorders like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Now, do I have your attention now? Because I can go on with this, or I can do, if you'd like, the normal fare. Like you can ask me what I think about the Saudi Arabian situation. Like I was on Newsmax TV this morning talking about stop mass hysteria. And my interviewer on Newsmax, John Bachman, said, Dr. Savage, what do you think about the killing of Mr. Khashoggi in the Saudi embassy? I said, I have no opinion whatsoever. I wasn't there. And I caught him off guard. He said, well, that's what makes you so popular, because you don't claim to know everything about everything like everyone else in the media has an opinion on everything. I said, it's easy to have an opinion on it. You know, you can might as well compute. Let's see, Trump had something to do with it. Trump had nothing to do with it. The Saudis did it. The Saudis didn't do it. I said, I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know who killed him. I don't even know how he died. I don't know the man. So that's an example. There are things I know something about. There are things I can make some judgment about. And there are things I know nothing about whatsoever. And I choose not to talk about things I know nothing about, incidentally. So I want to go on for a minute more, if I may, if you'll just give me another few minutes, on this issue of Lou Gehrig's disease and our toxins that are found in plants, like I mentioned, the cycads, and in certain seafood related to ALS, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. Or I can do this at another time, if you don't mind. This is the Savage Nation. I don't know. What do you want me to do today? You want me to go into there is no God? I don't want to talk about that, because all we're going to get is there is God, there is no God. I believe in God, I don't believe in God. That's not good talk radio. Good talk radio is talking about ALS and the possible causations, isn't it? Doesn't that advance our knowledge? And while we're doing that, let's play one of my favorite pieces of music, which is good to stimulate and organize your mind. It's Mozart's Horn Concertos. I want you to listen to it for a minute, and I'll tell you why. Listen. So I ask myself this question as I listen to Mozart, and tears come to my eyes, wondering where is the Mozart of today? And if Mozart were alive today, would he be invited to the Oval Office? Because just a little while ago, we had a rap artist, so-called, in the White House, and I wanted to cry at the thought of how low this nation has fallen. Because I think that if Mozart were alive, no politician would have anything to do with him, since there are not enough classical music lovers to amount to very much, and therefore, what do we need Mozart for? Let's go to the gutter. That's where most of the people are.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. Not long ago, it felt good to withdraw your cash from the bank, to expand the business, to go on vacation, to buy a new car, remember? But today, withdrawing your own cash has become very, very risky. Listen, according to The Secret War on Cash, a new Swiss America white paper I just read, it made my hair stand on end. You better be careful when you go to the bank. I learned why banks are now required to spy on you and I for the government. And then they report any financial behavior deemed suspicious or unusual. What does that mean? Get The Secret War on Cash now by calling 800-289-2646. 800-289-2646. Did you know simply spending cash today is enough to get you branded as a potential criminal? You heard me. You better read The Secret War on Cash. It's free by calling 800-289-2646. The new war against cash is really a war against all freedom-loving Americans. Find out how to survive and thrive by reading The Secret War on Cash. It's free if you call 800-289-2646 right now. I'm Michael Savage, and you're listening to Talk 1300 There they go. No rap music. There goes 90% of the listeners, the haters. If Mozart were alive, would he be given a tour of the Oval Office? Would the liberal media pay attention to Mozart in the White House? Nah. Because there aren't that many classical music lovers, so therefore Mozart is irrelevant. And that's the world we're living in. So if I wake up in the morning and I play certain music, it's not only classical, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm known for listening to jazz, rock and roll, you name it. But if I don't really feel good, I play classical music because it humbles me to the point where I almost break down inside, saying that's impossible that a human being could have lived on this earth like Mozart and had a brain that was like that could conceive music like that. To me, it's as close as you're ever going to get to God. And it goes back to the fact that there are differences between people. And unfortunately for us, we're living in a time where everyone thinks they're equal to everyone else because of social media. That's the tragic truth. If you saw the kind of idiots who are on Twitter or on Facebook who comment on things they know nothing about, but because they can fire off a one-liner, suddenly they're equal to the greatest scientists on earth. In fact, they're better. And this is the problem with social media. You could say it's very democratic and it levels the playing field. No, the opposite is true. they haven't qualified to comment at all. It's like having a moron in the classroom, let's say, if you're a teacher, and having an idiot in the back who keeps interrupting you and makes the class pay attention to him because he's got a big mouth and interrupts the teacher so no one learns anything. Trust me, I know what it's like to be a teacher. I know what it's like to have idiots in the classroom who disrupt the class. But because of the breakdown of our society in all standards and all forms in every aspect of our lives, no one knows what's right or wrong anymore. Very few people do anyway. They don't know north from south, east from west, truth from falsehood, good from bad. And so, therefore, if you go on the social media, any moron could take a picture of themselves, and now they're more famous than Einstein. People probably know a stripper more than they do Albert Einstein. I would say that the stripper who's attacking Donald Trump is better known today than, let's say, Martha Washington or something like that. You see where I'm coming from. So, anyway, to make a long story short, so I'm listening to Lou Gehrig. I'm listening to the Mozart, and then I see the article that Stephen Hawking's, the guy in the wheelchair, very tragic. Don't get me wrong. I'm not mocking his disease. It's a very tragic disease, but it does not make him the genius on every subject on the planet, including the kick in the guts today. He said in his last book that we just got a glimpse at today, there is no God. Well, I don't care what he said. He's one of billions of people who said something about God. Why is his statement about God more than the next guy? It isn't. But because he was a darling of the American left media, suddenly because he said there is no God, now all of a sudden that's a big deal. Now, I understand that it's not. I don't understand anything. That's all I want to say. So I try to tell you something about cycads, the sago palm, the Chamorro population, the relationship to blue-green algae and microtoxins that are found in algae in lakes and ponds and rivers and things like that, and how it might produce neurotoxins that are related to ALS and things like that. But it's a long topic for another day. Maybe I'll do it on my podcast. You know what I'm saying? Come January. This is a topic I could do for 3 days. Health. I may do a regular health segment where I don't have the time to do it on talk radio because it's a different format. It's like the way it is, commercial radio. You got to interrupt in order to support your show. You need advertisers. Let's be clear. It's a different story with a podcast. You get a chance to expound in a little more depth with a little more, insight if you get that chance. But anyway, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying. So here we are in this imperfect world, trying to bring some shards of perfection in this imperfect world, and we're talking about topics that most people are not interested in. Because if I would instead immediately shift to the word immigration, Honduras, you'd be interested more. And you might want to, actually you should be. Because as I said today, what's going on in this country right now with immigration is a disaster. It's a disaster that I've been writing about for 25 years. And I tried to publish a book right after I got my doctorate in 1979, 80, called Immigrants and Epidemics. This is after I had 6 books published already. And my co-author was the dean of the School of Public Health, brilliant man, and nobody in New York would touch the book for political reasons. That was then. Do you understand how much worse it's gotten here today? It's gotten worse here today than it was then. It's a miracle that I'm still on the radio, but I won't be here in January on some major stations, even though my ratings were higher than anyone else on the station, because of political reasons only. Make no mistake about it. God is truth is DNA. Welcome to the Savage Nation. I wrote that in my journals when I was 18 years old at Queens College, when I was still religiously searching for what truth really was. And I really have never stopped my quest. God is truth is DNA. What does that mean? Oh, I don't know. I never read it anywhere. How does he know anything? He's just a talk show host. Well, you figure out what that means. So here's a headline. First segment talked about the relationship between ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, and environmental toxins, for example. And in this segment, I'm going to talk about people in at least 22 states have come down with a rare polio-like illness, another neurological disease called acute flaccid myelitis, AFM, mostly in children. Now, the CDC is not reporting on any causation whatsoever. They tell you to wash your hands with soap and water. Gee, that's brilliant. That's really brilliant. You know, the one thing I wanted to do, which I don't want to do anymore, before Trump became president, was I wanted to run the CDC. I would have cleaned that place out like a clocksmith cleans out a clock that isn't running right. I would have gotten rid of all the dead weight, stealing all of the money for bad science and corrupt science and political science. Why are we not seeing any relationship between where this polio-like illness AFM is coming from? What do you mean they don't know? Wash your hands with soap and water. That's the best thing our best scientists can give us? Well, let's ask ourselves some questions. A couple of years back, your good friend Barack Obama flooded America with Honduran refugees. Remember he was bringing them in by the trainload through Mexico? Trainloads of young women and babies and infants who will never work in this country. Never. Permanent wards of the state. Now, before that, there had been no Zika in America. Remember that little disease called Zika? But you see, it was endemic in Honduras. Zika was endemic in Honduras. And Obama, by flooding America with millions, I don't know how many, hundreds of thousands of immigrants, he brought in Zika virus, and nothing ever was said about it by the vermin in the media. Well, now we have AFM, a polio-like illness, who are destroying children in 22 states. And again, the dummies in the media who are science illiterates, gee, I don't know. The CDC tells us there's no known cause. Wash your hands with soap and water. You hear? So let's look into this. By the way, welcome, free thinkers, wherever you are. We are a dying breed in an age of thought control. That's right. Free thinkers are a dying breed in thought control. So the headline is, Trump threatens to cut U.S. aid to Honduras over immigrants, right? Trump threatens to cut U.S. aid to Honduras over immigrants. Now, I was asked this morning, what would you do to stop the flood of Hondurans that are asking to cross from Mexico into America and, again, suck the nation dry? Well, here's an answer to that question. Didn't we just cut a deal with Mexico called NAFTA? Wasn't it highly touted by the Trump administration as a great cure-all for all of our problems with Mexico? Yeah, we told, this is going to be great. It's going to be wonderful for America. Well, since Mexico's now our partner in everything, and everyone's happy, we would say, we have to say to Mexico, okay, you've got to stop them in Mexico, because they have to transit through your nation, and we will provide the funding to build housing and detention facilities for all the Hondurans in Mexico, but they're not coming into America. They are not crossing our border. And you're going to stop them with the Mexican military, and you're going to give them the detention that they need and the care that they need, but we're not taking them. Now tell me what's wrong with that idea. Nothing's wrong with the idea, but I'm not in power. I'm only a talk show host. I should say, what do I know? I know everything. I know everything about a lot of things and nothing about some things. Let me tell you that right now. And so the fact of the matter is, that's a logical conclusion, isn't it? I think it's a logical way to stop the flood of Hondurans who are coming in, who are amassing to cross our border and suck our welfare system dry and destroy our hospitals again. Again, take everything from the American people, the schmucks who take everything. We may as well be invaded by a foreign army. So you look at the Hondurans, there's an awful lot of young men of military age on that mile of the caravan. Caravan, were they coming in by camel? Although they're calling it a caravan. No, you stop them in Mexico. The Mexicans stop them in Mexico. We provide Mexico with the money to build sane, logical, humane housing for them of a very primitive order. We're not giving them a three-level, a three-bedroom, two-bath color television house. Basic barracks like your soldiers live in. And they'll get much better care than they do in Honduras. And then when they're better, send them home. That's simple. The world has to understand that no first-rate nation can take in all of the world's poor. It's impossible. Now, that's what the communists would like you to believe, that we should all share everything. I would say start with Bernie Sanders' $1 million last year. Let him give it away, then I'll believe a word he says. The day Bernie Sanders gives away the money he's making on his communism is the day I'll believe a word any of them say. But again, okay, so what's this rare polio-like illness? Where is it coming from, AFM? You have to dig very hard to get any answers on this at all, because it's very serious. It can lead to paralysis and death in children. On October 4th, health officials in Minnesota announced that 6 children contracted AFM, acute flaccid myelitis, which is polio-like. Now, the CDC has been investigating this increase in AFM, which began in 2014, but they don't know why it's happening. Therefore, I'd fire the head of the CDC. I'd fire him yesterday. What do you mean he doesn't know? What kind of scientist doesn't know? What are you being paid for? If you don't know, get out of there. What, you like to go to vacations in Thailand and study the sexual habits of horses? So every article says the causes of AFM are still unclear. It's unclear. We don't know anything. But it's thought that AFM may be a communicable disease. Really? Well, there's one link. Oh, it may be a communicable disease. And certain viruses, including polio, enteroviruses, adenoviruses, West Nile virus, may even cause AFM. Where'd the West Nile virus come from? It says West Nile. It doesn't say New York virus, does it? I mean, the West Nile virus, where did it come from? Oh, well, you can pretty much see where I'm going with this, right? Well, you understand what I'd like to see, which is close the borders, do health screening like was done when your grandfather or grandmother came here, or great-grandfather, when anyone with an illness was quarantined to prevent them from spreading it into the healthy population. Well, those are antiquated ideas. You can quarantine anyone, no matter what disease they have. That would go against the sensibilities of the American left. And so the healthy population is at increased risk of diseases like this from these third world countries, in plain English. Common sense would dictate you don't let a diseased person in your country. And common sense, if you have a house or an apartment, would you let someone with a communicable disease in your apartment unless you're a moron in San Francisco? In San Francisco, they'd probably sleep with the person with a communicable disease to show what a good leftist they were. They'd embrace them and kiss them on the lips to show what good people they are. That's how sick they are. But if you have a sane nation, you say, no, I don't want to get sick. So what I'm saying to you is there's a relationship between some immigrants from some countries and some diseases. And if you're afraid to say it, then you're now living in the Soviet Union. Remember I told you I ran into a woman last week and just walking around in the mall, said she's from Hungary. It was so shocking when she said this to me. She said, I come from the ex-Soviet Union, and she said, people are more afraid to express themselves politically in America than they were in my country under Soviet rule. I was stunned by it. You're more afraid to express yourself at home or at work than the Soviets were under Stalin. And I put that on the radio 2 weeks ago, and I woke up and there was an article just the other day exactly on that subject, that people in America are terrified to express themselves because of the insane communist left. They're afraid to say one word at work for fear they'll be fired. They're afraid to say anything about anything. So you're now a prisoner in more fear than the Soviet era in America today. Yeah, okay, well, what can you do? It's just one man. One man against the world, shoveling you-know-what against the tide. It's very, very difficult odds here. I write the book, Stop Mass Hysteria, America's Insanity from the Salem Witch Trials to the Trump Witch Hunt. It's doing well, but not great. It's not doing as good as the commie books and the comic books. Not as good as the comic books on the left and the comic books on the right. People want simple books and simple ideas. They don't want to read. They don't want to think. They don't want history. All they want are polemics. I'm not complaining. It's the marketplace. Let the marketplace determine. There's nothing I can do about it. I tried something new. I went from politics to history. People were not really ready. I don't know where the book's going to be on the list, if it's even on the list after week one. I don't know whether you bought the book or you didn't buy the book. All I know is I went to my local bookstore, Barnes & Noble. They said they sold it out. So whether that'll indicate the country is ready to read something serious instead of a comic book or a comic book, I don't know. But unless you have a television show on Fox News in particular, and or you are lauded by the mainstream media as a genius, and you have no television or radio show, but you're on every show in the country, books have a very, very, very hard chance to ever get into the public eye. Those are the odds I like. I love it. I've always liked to swim against the tide. I've always loved swimming upriver. And I'm reaching a point where I don't know if I want to do it anymore. I know it's an odd time to tell you about all this stuff, but it's already almost November. I launched the book. I'm coming to the end of this cycle in radio and in the media. I've told you I would never do another political book, although I'm being asked to already, please do one more on the presidential. You can't leave us because the presidential election's coming up in 2020. Please, Savage, just hang in there for one more cycle. I'm not so sure I want to do it. And I don't want to talk much more about it right now because you're going to start, oh, Mike, don't leave us. You know, that kind of. I don't want to do the old Mike, don't leave us. I'm not trying to get you to do anything or say don't. But truthfully, maybe it's time for me to do a Johnny Carson, is what I'm thinking. And, here's the funny part about how I work. When thoughts start to flood up in my brain from my subconscious, I listen to them. I can only repress thoughts for so long. And sometimes you got to listen to your inner, right? You got to listen to the old inner. And I'm reaching that point. Well, what does it really matter? What does it really matter? Do I have to do this until I drop dead on the radio? I went to dinner last night with someone who wants to give me a television show. Actually, I don't want to talk about it. It was real deep. So, well, there's someone in the media who's 84 years old who said he's never going to stop till he dies. I said, well, I don't know. That's great. Is that noble? There's something noble about saying you're going to work till you drop dead like a horse? They shoot horses, don't they? Remember? What do you dance on the dance floor till you drop dead? Or is there more nobility in leaving at the height of your career, at the top of your career? I'm walking out, and that's the end of it. These are the questions that I'm thinking about it. But here's the problem. I'm drifting in from disease to this. Here's the problem with that thinking. I don't have any hobbies. Not really. I mean, I collect old cars, but I have 2 old Jaguars. I don't drive them that much. Not like I sit in the garage and touch the carburetors, I don't do anything I really like outside of radio. This is what I really love doing. That's the problem. I've given my heart and my soul to this for a quarter of a century. I don't golf. It's too slow for me. I mean, if you golf, God bless you. I find it too slow a sport. It's just I can't watch the ball and then walk, and that's too slow. Tennis is too slow for me. I don't do anything other than this. This is what I love. I love ideas. I love thinking. I love politics. Can you transition to becoming a normal human being after a quarter of a century of driving yourself to the top based on truth? Well, tune in to find out. Hey, look, the FBI is warning anyone who gets paid through direct deposit, is that you, to be on the lookout for phishing emails requesting personal information. They may ask for login credentials to their bank accounts. The credentials can be used to change bank account information, and then they're going to block alerts to consumers warning you of changes to your direct deposits, which are then redirected to another account controlled by scammers, right? There are so many threats in today's connected world, and it just takes one weak link for criminals to get in, and it's a good thing New LifeLock Identity Theft Protection happens to add the power of Norton Security to help protect you against threats to your devices that you really can't easily see or fix on your own. Come on. No one can stop every cyber threat. We know that. No one can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions everywhere. We know that. But New LifeLock with Norton Security can see threats you might miss on your own. So I want you to go to LifeLock.com or call 1-800-LifeLock, promo code SAVAGE. That's very important. Okay, promo code SAVAGE, very important if you love this show, and you're going to get an extra 10% off your first year, plus a $25 Amazon gift card with annual enrollment. You got it? That's 1-800-LifeLock, promo code SAVAGE. That's promo code SAVAGE, terms apply. Right. And now we go back to free thinking on the Savage Nation, wherever you are, you the dying breed in an age of thought control. Just to summarize in a few sentences or less, I started by talking about ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, Steve Hawking saying there is no God, and I went from ALS to the outbreak of polio-like a polio-like illness that are really wrecking our children, trying to suggest there's a relationship to immigrants. And I will tell you right now, you say, well, come on, what's the relationship between this polio-like illness called AFM that's hitting the children in America and immigrants? Are you just doing this for hysteria because you want to sell Stop Mass Hysteria? I'll let you decide, okay? If you go back in the literature, you will find that epidemiologic data suggests that this AFM cluster was likely associated with the large outbreak of EVD68. Do you remember EVD68? Do you know where EVD68 had been endemic and still is endemic, which you'll not find in the media anymore? Honduras and Central America. I'll say it again. This virus, EVD68, which we read about for a while, has been wiped out of the literature. You can't find it anywhere. And you cannot find any science that shows any relationship between EVD68 and the outbreak of AFM, because they will not fund that kind of research, because, as I said to you, I've tried to tell you over and over again how corrupt our science has become in the West, particularly in the United States of America. In other words, you will not get, if you were a PhD student or young scientist, and you said, look, I'm thinking about this outbreak of polio-like illness and the older relationship between EVD68, which was endemic in Honduras, you wouldn't get 10 cents to study that. The CDC wouldn't fund it. The NIH wouldn't fund it. you'd probably lose your postdoc. You'd be thrown out of school. This is what happened in the Soviet Union under Stalin. I'm just trying to tell you the way it is. I'm just trying to tell you, there's almost no science allowed anymore unless it conforms to the politics of the time. And what's sad here is that I tried to awaken the Trump administration. They're super bright people. They listen for a while, but they could care less about what's going on at the NIH and the CDC. They need somebody to go in there and clean house. Right now, it's the same as it was under Obama.